Well, welcome to our Elixir Health Inspired event. This month, we're going to talk about a very important and popular subject in our store, the menopause. We're going to try and understand what the menopause is, explore the symptoms, and discuss some of the treatments that are out there. And as I am a man, I'm not the best suited person to deliver this message with Eileen today. So I've invited my lovely wife along to come and have a chat with Eileen. So Debbie.
So, hi there everybody. I'm really looking forward to this conversation with you, Eileen. I'm currently 47. I had my last period about 9 months ago. However, I believe that I've had symptoms of perimenopause probably for about the last 3 years now. So it will be good to get to grips with some of the things that have been going on and whether or not they are to do with the menopause or not.
Yeah, super.
Without further ado, we are honoured and very delighted to introduce the expertise of one of the industry shining lights on menopause, Eileen Durward. So over to you, Eileen.
Very much. Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited about this too.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I have been working for Vogel for 23 years. It'll be 24 years in January. I have been involved in the education department the whole way through. So I help to run our helpline, and I also do lecturing, workshops, what we would call community talks, obviously before the lockdown happened. So I'm involved in a lot in training people, answering people's questions, but also just giving this little bit of extra advice. As far as the menopause goes, when I realised I was approaching the menopause, and I think like the majority of women, suddenly it hits you, you're like, what's happening? I didn't have anybody to ask. My mum had sadly passed away. My sister was on HRT. And although I was working in this lovely health environment, the only books I could get were sort of medical ones, research ones, and everything just went over the top of my head. I really couldn't understand what these people were talking about in terms of the menopause. And I thought, the only way I'm going to get through it is to keep reading, asking other people in the business, and just to keep going. So this is what's happened now. We've evolved, we've been looking, sort of focusing on the menopause probably for about at least 9 or 10 years. And the information that we get, a lot of it is from women themselves. So the articles that I do and the talks I give are from real people. So women come to me with problems, and I know that if one woman has asked this question, there's going to be a lot more women out there with the same question. So it's really just evolved from there. Then the powers that be here decided that I should start doing video blogs, which was another kind of like, help me. So this is where we are today.
Fantastic.
Okay, so I'll ask the first question, if you don't mind, but then I will definitely hand over to Debbie for the rest.
Okay,
so for the benefits of me and for our listeners, what is the what is the menopause?
That is a really good question. First of all, the menopause is going to be different for absolutely every woman. It's a very unique experience. So that's why it's very difficult to get information out there, because what one woman may experience, another will have no idea what you're talking about. So there are basically 3 stages. The first one is the perimenopause. So this is the run up to the menopause, which can start, you felt that things have maybe been happening for 3 years. It can start even before that. So between maybe late 30s, early 40s, very often the hormones at that point are starting to subtly change. 2 things tend to happen that will give you an idea that you may be approaching the menopause. One is your periods will start to change. So they might get closer together, they might get further apart, they might get heavier or lighter, longer or shorter. So there can be all sorts of different combinations of what happens to your periods. The second thing that can happen is you get regular periods, sometimes right to the very end. But 2 to 3 years beforehand, you may start to experience menopause symptoms. And this is where it can get confusing, because women are thinking, my periods are normal, so why am I getting hot flushes? Why am I getting joint pain? So there can be a lot of physical changes apart from periods. For some women, they go along completely as normal, and then suddenly their periods stop and that's it. So again, it's going to be different for everybody. The menopause itself, and this is the confusing bit, is the one moment in time when your periods have stopped for good. But you don't know your periods have stopped for good until you've been at least 1 to 2 years without a period. So the menopause is a retrospective moment in time, but we tend to cover everything by just calling it the menopause, just for easiness sake. We tend to go with 2 years without periods purely because in our experience, a lot of women can get periods back after a year or more. So we tend to say when you've not had periods for 2 years, you are then classed as postmenopausal. So that's your 3 stages. And then postmenopausal is basically forever.
Really interesting, especially the, you know, like I said, I've been 9 months without a period, so I'm kind of thinking, yay, that's it, they've gone. But oh no, there still might be one waiting.
There may be, and it can be quite disconcerting and also really worrying for women that they've gone a year or more and suddenly a period comes back. Very often it's just a last fling by your hormones. Your hormones are going, I don't want to go. But it can be other issues, and that's something we'll talk about when we get to the questions about maybe going to see a doctor.
So contraception wise, actually you still need to make sure, even if your periods have stopped for 9 months to a year, you should really still be thinking about contraception at that time. We
say to people 2 years, because the rise apparently of menopausal babies is that because a lot of women, I mean, we've had some women, they've missed periods for 3 months and they think that's them safe, and no. We say 2 years just to be on the safe side.
Cool. So we'll go actually into the symptoms of menopause in a bit, because I know that they're so wide and so many. But can you explain actually what happens to your body during the menopause?
Again, it's going to be completely different for everybody, but basically what's happening is that by the time women get to 45 roughly, or between 45 and 55, nature decrees that's the point where you stop having children, and so your hormones start to wind down. So you're looking mainly at estrogen, progesterone, and also testosterone can sometimes be a little bit of an issue, and your production of these hormones will start to slow down, and eventually after maybe 2 to 3 years they then get to a baseline where they will probably stay roughly at that level for the rest of your life. Problem is that hormones don't necessarily fall in harmony with each other, and this is the problem. If all your hormones fall nicely and gently over 2 to 3 years, you will probably have very few problems. But because of modern life, because of diet, because of stress, and a whole number of external factors, even our emotions and how we feel, can affect the production of the hormones. And it's mainly estrogen. For the majority of women, estrogen is the hormone that causes the most problems because it can go up as well as down. So over a period of 2 to 3 years, your estrogen could actually be going like that, and that can cause a number of problems. The other thing is we tend to see the sex hormones as just being for reproduction, but estrogen in women is needed or controls a whole range of other health issues. So estrogen it's a mood enhancer, so it keeps your mood up. Estrogen is needed for heart health, for muscle health. It can control your energy. It also, and this is a really important one, it helps to control your water balance. It helps to control your temperature. It helps to stabilize your pain perception. So when your estrogen starts to fall, any area where estrogen was involved could also suffer too. And this is why there's such a huge range of symptoms that women get, because it depends on your own level of health as to which areas may suffer the most.
So is there any way that I could know that I'm in the menopause or the perimenopause stage?
It's very, very difficult to tell, because if you go and get tests, then that's going to test your hormone level on the day. Mm-hmm. And you could be going through the menopause and have a high estrogen day. So the test would come back, you're not in the menopause. But you're going, yes, I am. You could have a low estrogen day. So you might come back, oh, you're borderline. You might not be. So the only thing you can really go on is roughly your age. So that is between 45 and 55, although quite a few women can start earlier, but very often it tends to be hereditary. So knowing when your mum or sister or aunties or grandma got to the menopause, what age they were, can sometimes be a real help. So that and symptoms, if you're getting what look like menopause symptoms, very often that's it. The problem arises with women who've had hysterectomies, or who've had ablations, or who are maybe on the Mirena coil or progesterone only pills. They don't have missing periods as a guide, and it can be a lot more difficult to figure out if you're in the menopause or not. And sometimes in that particular group, you can only go by age and what symptoms you may be experiencing.
So that leads us on quite nicely to symptoms. I do think that Neil suffers with these symptoms as much as I do.
Yeah, we do get men coming to us as well, going, oh.
And I do have questions on it as well, because it is really important for men to be able to support their wives and understand what this condition is, because it can have serious consequences on some women.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I do think sort of one of the symptoms that we discuss a lot at work is people saying, I don't feel like me anymore.
Yeah.
So can we go through some of the main symptoms that people phone the hotline about?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, in the shop, I think the first one, and probably the biggest one, is the hot flushes and the night sweats.
Yes.
So for those that don't understand a hot flush, what is it and what's it about?
What happens is there is a gland in your brain called the hypothalamus, which does a lot of different things, but one of its main jobs is to regulate your body's temperature. It can be affected by falling estrogen, and what happens then is that it thinks your body is hotter than what it is, and suddenly it kind of goes, oh, something's going wrong here, and it will cause a hot flush or a sweat. All that really happens is that the blood vessels in the surface of the skin open up, you get a rush of blood to the surface, and the heat or the sweat is then evaporated, and that cools you down. There can be different sweats and flushes. There's not just one. Some women, they might just get it from here up. Some feel a glow. Others, it can start in their feet and be, some women, they call it a whoosh. It's almost like there's a whoosh of heat that goes right through their body. For some women, it can be extremely hot. You go red in the face, you can perspire. It can be really uncomfortable, and also if you're out and about, very embarrassing if you're in front of other people. So it is basically all to do with your body's core temperature changing. But one of the really interesting things we found over the years is that there can be other triggers as well.
Okay.
Your nervous system gets pulled into the menopause, whether it likes it or not, and your flight or fight mechanism becomes very sensitive to anything. So you can have a cup of coffee, you get a caffeine hit, your nervous system goes, whoa, you get a big rush of adrenaline or histamine, and that can trigger a hot flush. So one of the things we say to women is that although falling estrogen can be an issue with the hot flushes or the night sweats, probably 75% of them are caused by other factors such as diet, lifestyle, stress. And what we say to women, if you get one, and it's really telling, if they tend to get hot flushes at the same time every day, there is usually a trigger of some kind. So we say do a little diary and put down everything you eat and drink and be truthful. And also how you're feeling emotionally, because anger, irritability can trigger flushes too. And then you write down the times that you get the flushes and the sweats, and very often you can put it back to, I had a cup of coffee at lunchtime, I had a donut at lunchtime, I didn't have any lunch, I was really angry at lunchtime. So all these factors can be another trigger for hot flushes and sweats.
It's a fantastic tip. The other one, which I think was for me one of the big ones, was fatigue. Lots of people, especially ladies in my age, are coming in and saying, I'm just tired all of the time.
Yeah, it's logical. If you think about it, the physical changes that are going on at your body at this time will drain you of energy. If you're then still trying to multitask, you're working, you're busy, everything's going on, where is your body getting the energy from? And very often what happens is your body goes, I can't do this, I can't multitask, which should be banned. Multitasking should be banned in the menopause. But your body goes, I can't do this. So it creates the fatigue to slow you down. So that's the first thing, is if you're getting fatigued all the time, you must respect your body and give it rest and recuperation. If you think about it, teenagers going through puberty, what are one of the things they do? They sleep. They're very sensible. But as women, we don't. And a lot of women say to me, I will push through it, which is the worst thing you can do. Second thing about fatigue is other health issues can come in to the menopause. That's low vitamin D, low iron, poor thyroid function, which is a big one. An awful lot of women end up borderline low thyroid in the menopause, and also low B12. So all of these can appear at this time. They can all cause fatigue. So I always say to women, if you are getting fatigued the whole time, if rest and relaxation don't help, you go to the doctor and get these things tested, because if it's one of those, then they can be treated simply.
That's fantastic. The one thing that I actually added to my diet at the time where the fatigue was bad was actually magnesium. And for me, I think that has made the difference in between me not being able to do anything. I've also got fibromyalgia, so fatigue is a big part of that. It's gone from me not being able to do anything to be able to exercise every day. So fatigue, I think, is a major issue that we talk about. One that Neil's going to love me asking you this question. We also have ladies that talk about vaginal dryness and discomfort during sex.
Okay. Our bodies have numerous areas that we call mucous membranes. And mucous membranes are areas of tissue that are basically wet and moist and produce mucus. When we start going through the menopause, remember I mentioned about how falling estrogen can affect our water balance. So our bodies can get dehydrated at cellular level. And when that happens, the body will grab water from anywhere. And in the menopause, it's not just the vagina that can become dry, but it can be the lungs, it can be the bladder, the digestive tract, the mouth, the eyes, the skin, and the nose, and sometimes even the ears and the lungs. So one of the things we say to women, any kind of mucous membrane dryness is probably an indication that you need plenty of water to start with. Secondly, the cervix has estrogen receptor sites on it that trigger the production of mucus. So if your estrogen starts to drop, then the production of vaginal mucus starts to dry, and that will have a big effect on vaginal tissue, because if it's not moisture enough, then it's not going to expand. The skin, the vaginal walls can become quite brittle, and that can often lead to pain. One of the best things for that, apart from the water, is your sea buckthorn oil, which can be absolutely fantastic, and also a vaginal probiotic. If the mucus goes in the vagina, that will affect the balance of friendly bacteria in the vagina, and that can then lead to things like bladder infections. So a vaginal probiotic is a really important one to add into that.
Fantastic, thank you. So next one, and a lot of people are talking to us about this one, is difficulty in sleeping. So I'm tired all the time, but I then can't sleep.
It's estrogen's fault again. When your estrogen falls, that interferes with your sleep, in that very often you can't fall off to sleep as quickly, but also low estrogen stops you from having a deep sleep. So it takes longer to get you off to sleep, and very often your mind's going, which revs everything up. But also you're sleeping at a much shallower level, which means that external things can wake you up more. Slightest little bit of noise, partner moving in bed, feeling a little bit hot. But it can also be internal things, that the liver revs up between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. And very often, because you're in a much shallower sleep, the liver's activity can wake you up as well. So in a lot of instances, it's just that you're not getting down into a deep enough sleep to have a good night's sleep. So we're looking at all the sleeping remedies that you can take before going to bed, things like valerian and hops, because they can keep you in a deeper sleep for longer.
I think sleep hygiene as well is something that we've talked quite a lot about.
Yeah.
As mums, we spend a lot of time getting babies into sleep routines, and then when it comes to us as mums, we actually forget that our body can do with a sleep routine itself.
Absolutely, yeah. And one of the things I found, just from a personal level, is that I like adventure books, and I find that if I read those before going to bed, I am revved up. So even if you are quiet at night and you read, you need to watch what kind of reading material you have, because if you're reading exciting books or listening to something exciting on the radio, then your nervous system can start to rev up again. So
we are going to be holding a inspired event specifically around sleep as well, because it is such a big item, not just for menopause, but in life in general.
Especially this year, I think. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Something that we've touched on already is the feeling of not being me. This is a conversation I've had with some dear friends recently. They're just like, I just want to get me back. And it's the range of emotions that you can go through. The 1 minute you're angry and you want to kill everybody, or you know, the next minute you're crying and it's like, well, why are you crying? It's because there's a really nice kitten over there, or you know, it's stuff that would normally not faze you at all. And it's that whole mood train that you go on.
Yeah, again, estrogen helps us to control our emotions. If you think about it, women are quite good in a lot of areas at controlling their emotions. When estrogen starts to fall, that control goes. So you literally can't help it. You know, instead of going, oh, I can't shout, I can't get angry, I can't complain, that filter completely disappears. Very often, the real you then comes out. I actually had someone I know who, when she was going through menopause, she went through a phase of being angry, and she said, I just loved it. She said, it's the first time in my life I allowed myself to be angry. So it's being aware that these emotions can come, they can really surprise you. I mean, I remember once crying my eyes out, and it was in absolute despair. And then I stopped, and then I was like, why? I had no idea.
Yeah.
It felt like the end of the world at that moment. So these emotions, they are real. And that's the one thing to say to women: this is not in your head. You are not going mad. It's just these emotions are coming to the fore, and it's about maybe even exploring them. You know, why am I getting so angry? Who's annoying me? What situations are doing this? What can happen sometimes is that, and this is one thing that obviously more needs to be looked into, but sometimes past events that we've really buried can come up as well. And sometimes, you know, I have to recommend things like counselling or talking therapy, because for these women, some really deep things can come out. So it's being aware that at this particular point, we can't always control what we say and how we feel.
So yeah, there you go, Neil. It's not, I can't control what I say. Next, and another thing for me is digestive issues. A lot of reflux ladies talk about. For me, it's bloating and cramping and that kind of thing. Is that also a menopausal trait?
Yeah. Remember that your digestive tract is a mucous membrane, so it can be affected by falling estrogen. Also, the liver gets involved, and what can happen is that everything just slows down. So instead of your food going through you nice and regularly, it can take twice as long, and in the process, as things are stagnating, gases are produced, and that's very often what gives the bloating. So it's transit time very often is an issue, and also the stomach acid, that can decrease quite dramatically as well. So you're looking at stomach bitters for getting the stomach working again. And what we found is that so many menopausal women are put on proton pump inhibitors because it's not picked up that this is a menopausal issue. So they go to the doctor, I'm getting indigestion. And one of the issues with proton pump inhibitors is that they can interfere with the absorption of calcium and magnesium, and that can then have repercussions as well. So
see that a lot.
Yeah.
Omeprazole is obviously, you know, dished out all over the place, and we see that a hell of a lot.
Yeah. So it's about improving liver function. It's about taking digestive bitters. It's about maybe taking a good probiotic just to help to get everything moving. The other thing that can happen too is that our carb digestion, for some reason, we seem to find that carbohydrates tends not to be particularly good for menopausal women in the whole, you know, your general carbohydrates. And it can take the digestive system a lot longer to process them. So not only do they contribute to things like weight gain, but they can be part of the bloating and the cramping and the slow transit time. So we always say to women, really watch your carbohydrate intake and maybe try a low carb diet with loads of veg, a little bit of fruit, things like that, can often just make quite a lot of difference.
So when we're talking carbohydrates, just to be clear, we're talking refined or unrefined carbs?
You're looking mainly at all the refined ones. So that's your processed foods, your white flour, white pasta, white rice, to keep the other carbohydrates to a minimum. So your whole wheats, you know, so many people have wheat for every single meal of the day. So we're just sort of saying, try and keep that to a minimum, but again, make sure you're getting loads of your good vegetables to help with roughage and everything as well.
Just while we're talking about the food side of things, is there any foods that we can eat that will not only obviously help our digestive system, but will also help with the menopause as well?
Loads of fresh veg. A lot of them are contain phytoestrogens, so you're actually getting a little bit of an estrogenic boost if you're eating lots of fresh foods. I just say to people, have as big a variety as you can. Your nutritional needs in the menopause go absolutely sky high because of all these changes and the energy that you need. So the bigger the range of foods that you have, the more likely you are to get everything that you need. So you're looking at dark green leafy vegetables, small amount of grains and pulses, things like your small portions of beans. Round grain brown rice is really good if you're suffering from constipation or you're getting a bit sluggish. So a small portion of the round grain brown rice with one meal a day can be really, really helpful.
Fantastic. Okay. Reduced sex drive, libido. That was another one that a lot of people sort of come in, and it has to become such a major thing for them to actually start to talk about it.
Absolutely. It's a strange one because some women go, I'm so glad I never want sex again in my life. That's it. I'm really happy. And for other women, it is a real issue because they miss it, and it can also affect their relationship with their partner. And if their partner doesn't understand, then that's going to be added pressure. It's a difficult one because you've got the fatigue, you've got the fact that you may be multitasking, you're really busy, you've got low estrogen, which is obviously going to be a factor because that's going to decrease your sex drive. You've got the fact if you've got vaginal dryness or pain. So it can be a combination of different things that at the end of the day, women just go, you know, I'm not even thinking about it, let alone wanting anything like that. It's a difficult one because you need to then look at what's going on in your life. Do you have time? Are you making time? Maca is, I recommend maca a lot. Not the powder, but the actual herb. It seems to be a really nice one for just sort of revving things up again. The thing that I tend to say is that we don't, as women, put ourselves, we all have a list of priorities. Most women do. You get up in the morning and you have a list of things. We don't even put ourselves on the list. You know, never mind that we should be at the top of the list. So for relationship issues, I usually say, you know, go on date nights, plan a date night so you've got the week to think about it, to look forward to it. Anticipation is a big part of the whole picture. And then rather than your partner saying, okay, let's rush upstairs to the bedroom when you're really tired and don't want to do anything, you've got that time of anticipation and something to look forward to, going out for a meal when you can, and just doing things together. And sometimes that's all it takes. It's about prioritizing the relationship rather than trying to fit the relationship into everyday life, which can be really hard.
I think especially when, you know, some of the other things that we've talked about already, like the emotional side of things, the roller coaster, I think one of the last things you want to do is then hop into bed. Yeah. But like you're saying, if you're having a date night, actually that's good for the other things too. So the emotions and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really good advice. Osteoporosis is another thing that women are either extremely worried about because they've heard that it's linked heavily with the menopause, or it's something that they are starting to suffer with.
Yeah, it's a really important one here. It's planning as early as possible to look after your bones. So the problem is if you wait until the menopause, then the degeneration may already have started, and sometimes then all you can do is stop it rather than improve it. So it's about getting as much calcium as you can from your diet. That's the kind of baseline. But calcium needs magnesium to get to the bone. So magnesium is almost like the bus that takes calcium to the bone. So you need to make sure that you're not just focusing on calcium, but you're also focusing on magnesium in your diet. And again, nature is wonderful. A lot of our natural and fresh foods are also high in calcium and magnesium. So it's about looking at diet. At this point, I probably would add in a supplement as well. just to make sure that you're getting, and especially if you are having stomach acid problems, then calcium and magnesium need good stomach acid in order to be broken down properly. So it can be a combination of things going on there. The other thing is exercise, is weight-bearing exercise, which is really important to keep your bones healthy. And that can be really difficult, because if you're going through the menopause, if you're fatigued, if your get up and go has gone, if you've got joint aches and pains, if you don't have time, where do you put the exercise in? And a lot of women say, oh, I'll go down the gym once a week. It's probably the worst thing you can do. So it's about daily exercise. Even 10-15 minutes brisk walk a day will do you more good than one long session once a week. So it's doing all these weight-bearing exercises. The other thing,
weight-bearing exercise, we're talking walking, running.
Walking, running, sort of gym work, that kind of thing. Even now, I mean, I'm just lucky enough, I've got myself one of these desktop things where I can now stand up. So because a lot of, especially with so many people now working from home, when I work from home, I don't have the office to run round. So I'm sitting much more. So now I've got one of these desktop things, so I can raise it up, I can stand on my feet, and I can basically do a little bit of marching whilst I'm maybe on the phone or something. So there's lots of things that you can do just to get that regular weight-bearing exercise in. Obviously, at the end of the day, if anybody's really worried about their bones, then, you know, you do need to seek medical advice just to make doubly sure.
I just want to go back on the exercise thing. For me personally, it was something that when the fibromyalgia was really bad, I would stay away from the exercise, because actually, you know, the fatigue that came with it was awful. However, now that I'm doing regular exercise, even if, like you say, that's just a 15-minute walk with the dog, it's actually helping the fibromyalgia as well as the other aches and pains too. And I think with the menopause, a little bit of exercise, like you're saying, on a daily basis is so important. And it's something that we talk about a lot when we're talking about the things that we believe are like top tips for health. Exercise is always in there. And it's like you say, it's not about going to the gym once a week, it's about just walking. It's just about choosing the stairs instead of the lift. It's little things that we know actually are right, but you know, we don't always do.
Definitely.
Sort of along those same kind of lines is the joint and muscle pain. So that was, I think, for me a few years ago, I put it down to the fibromyalgia, because you know, I know that it was one of the symptoms of that, but then talking to friends and now people in the shop, actually joint and muscle pain seems to be quite common in the menopause.
It's really common. It's about number 3 on our top 10 list, which really shocked us when this first started to become apparent. And this is the one that nearly always gets missed at the doctors. But we get so many women who, they're in a lot of pain, they get all these tests done, the tests all come back negative, and they get told there's nothing wrong with you, and they go, yes, there is, you know, I'm in a lot of pain. The main thing that happens, it's all to do with dehydration. If you think about your joints, you've got ligaments and tendons, that these are like little elastic bands that move. So, you know, my tendons and ligaments are stretching and moving as I do this. I'm sure we've all found a rubber band at the back of a drawer somewhere that is far too old, and it's basically gone stiff and it just snaps when you try and stretch it. So our ligaments and tendons and also the pads between the joints can get dehydrated. So these shorten. And when that happens, you lose range of movement. Your joints can become very stiff, especially first thing in the morning. And you can also then start to get things like osteoarthritis, where the joints start to rub together. So this is a really important one that needs sorting as soon as possible, because if it's left, this isn't one that will go away afterwards because the damage will have been done. So it's really important. Water, absolutely imperative for joint aches and pains. You're also looking at lubricating the joints, so that's your fish oils or your flaxseed oils, and you'd also be looking at natural anti-inflammatories to help that as well. So that's one of the symptoms that really does need sorting as soon as you figure out that you've got it.
And it does sound like it's easily sorted as well, like you're saying, with lots of water and then flaxseed or fish oils and stuff.
I've had women who've come back after a week or two, just on water, saying that they're better. And especially if you get the joint aches, if you're really stiff first thing in the morning and then things ease off, that just means that you've been really dehydrated during the night. And for that, I always recommend, and loads of other things as well, a small shot glass of warm water just before bed, just a small amount. That can keep you hydrated. It's not going to put a lot of pressure on the bladder, so it's unlikely to wake you up for you to go to the toilet in the middle of the night. But that can just be enough to stop the early morning stiffness and anxiety. So, good one.
Another one, I mean, there's so many, we could literally be here all day. We've only got a couple, but problems with memory and concentration. The amount of times I've come into my kitchen and, okay, what was it that I was in here for? You know, that kind of thing.
I remember once sort of coming to almost trying to fit a big bottle of fabric conditioner into the fridge. And what kind of frightens me was the fact that I didn't go, why am I putting it in the fridge? I was wondering, how come it didn't fit? Yes, brain function, memory, concentration. This is a big one, and especially for women who are working, if they are in quite a competitive environment, or they're managerial, or they have to be on the ball the whole time. It can be, and I know for me, it was just like someone pulled the plug. And there's nothing, you've got nothing to grasp onto. So things here, water, just remember that, your brain needs an awful lot of water to function. And when you're dehydrated, your brain shrinks. So loads and loads of water. It can also be due to low blood sugars. This is a really common thing that we find in the menopause, that blood sugar levels can go all over the place. They're less controllable. So it may well be you could go 4 hours without eating beforehand. Now you might only be able to go 2 before your blood sugars plummet. So plummeting blood sugar levels can affect brain function. So you need to make sure that you're eating well and reasonably often. And also just the fact that we get to a certain age, there's so much going on in our heads, and sometimes we can't focus on everything. So you can look at the water, just make sure that your blood sugar levels are well controlled. Things like caffeine can do it, and sugar can do it. It can give you a big rush, but that can then affect your concentration. Herbs like ginkgo biloba can be a really nice one for that, just to help to keep the concentration going. The other thing is not to panic when it happens, because what you're doing, you're talking to somebody and suddenly you can't remember their name, and you've known them for maybe 30 years or something. So what you do is you then go into a panic, you get a rush of adrenaline, that makes everything worse. I found when it happened to me, I would just say, oh, I'm having a black hole moment, I'll be back in a minute. And when you have a little laugh, when you relax, it comes back a lot quicker. So it's trying to be in control of the moment when your brain starts to do these weird things.
Brains are great, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Something that, again, is part of the menopause, but also people are struggling with it a lot this year, is weight gain and weight loss. Is that a particular menopausal symptom?
Yes, absolutely, but for a lot of different reasons. One of the things is, when we get to menopause age, very often we do slow down. We can say, oh, I eat the same as I did as a teenager. We probably don't. There's little things can sneak in. I mentioned about carbohydrate. When we're going through the menopause with the flight or fight, which happens to an awful lot of women. So you've got the flight or fight going on. When that is engaged on a daily basis, your cortisol production goes up. One of the things that cortisol does, it makes you feel hungry, because in a flight or fight situation, your body goes, this might happen again. I've got to make sure that I've got enough energy to cope with something that might happen on another day. So you mainly crave sweet things to get things to go up. What also happens is that very often with carbs, the body has to get its fat from somewhere. And nowadays, so many women are on low-fat diets. So what happens then is that your carbohydrates will be broken down and the body will turn them into fat. And one of the areas that it goes on is around the middle. That weight around the middle is a classic adrenal stress weight gain. So this is where we need to look at our stress levels, get our adrenals under control for weight. And if it's around the middle, then we need to sort the stress that's going on in our lives as well. So that's the kind of main issues that we find for a lot of women. So what women unfortunately tend to do, they will then go on a low-fat diet, low-carb diet, and exercise every day of the week. All you do there is your body goes into famine mode. It goes, there's no fat, there's no food. What am I supposed to live on? It will slow your metabolism down even further. If you're then exercising like mad, the body goes, I don't have enough energy for this. It slows your metabolism down even further. And I've had one lady, and it was horrendous. She was down to 800 calories a day, and she was doing an hour at the gym 5 nights a week. And she was crying down the phone because she was still putting on weight. And I said, you're starving your body. So healthy fats on a daily basis, you need them for hormone production. So if you go on a low-fat diet, that's going to affect your hormones as well. So it's about you've got to feed your body through this rather than starve it.
It sounds to me like when we're talking about all of these different conditions, they're all so linked. And if you've got an issue with one thing, if you don't address that issue, that then knocks on to something else. Yeah. So for instance, we're talking about weight gain and loss, but actually that will then, if you're not eating the right foods, that's going to impact on your digestive system, which in turn is going to affect something else. And so, it's a snowball, really. And water seems key through all of it, whether it's to do with your memory or actually your digestive system, or even the hot flushes. Water and what you're eating plays a huge part in all of that.
Absolutely, yeah.
So with that in mind, is there anything that I can do to prepare myself for the menopause? So if maybe I'm not at menopause age yet, or I think that possibly I'm coming on, what can I do to help myself?
It's to strengthen your nervous system. The stronger and more robust your nervous system is, the better your body will cope through the menopause. Because if your adrenals are not being pulled into flight or fight, it's stopping half the symptoms that you may be predisposed to getting. So it's making sure that you've got a strong nervous system, that you're eating well before you get to the menopause. And if you have any menstrual cycle issues, if you have painful periods, if you have really heavy periods, then that's an indication that there's already a hormonal imbalance going on, and that can then magnify itself as you get to the menopause. So sorting these issues before you get there it's worth its weight in gold, definitely.
So at what point do I say, actually, these symptoms are, might not be menopausal? When should I go and see my GP? Because there's an argument where you could put down every of my symptoms are, it's menopause and not worry. Should I go and see my GP?
If someone's starting the menopause, I do recommend getting vitamin D levels checked, because the problem with low vitamin D, low thyroid function, low iron and low B12, all of them can cause fatigue, all of them can cause joint aches and pains, all of them can cause anxiety, low mood, most of them can interfere with sleep, they can all possibly cause weight gain. So all of these can also cause symptoms that are absolutely identical to the menopause. So I would say to all women to get these tested at some point, because if everything comes back okay, then you know that you can just focus on sorting things out because they are all the menopause. But if you think about it, in the UK, low vitamin D is a huge issue for a huge part of the population. So a lot of these symptoms that women are getting may just be due to low vitamin D rather than the menopause itself. And we find that the menopause gets blamed for everything. And my advice here would be, if you try natural remedies on your menopause symptoms, in the majority of cases, they will improve because you've improved your diet, you've improved your sleep. So if you have tried everything and your symptoms don't improve, that would normally be the point where you would say, right, there may be something else going on, let's get this checked out.
Fantastic.
And I know at the minute it's really difficult. That's the only thing, obviously, getting to see a doctor at the moment. But that would be the best way forward.
So this wouldn't be a menopause chat if we didn't talk about HRT.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your thoughts on HRT? Has it a place?
I think absolutely. It just depends on the woman concerned. For some women, you know, the menopause still gets a bit of a laugh. You know, women get embarrassed telling other people because it's like, oh, it's just your hormones. For some women, that hormone imbalance can be absolutely catastrophic, and it can make their life unbearable, either physically or emotionally. And natural remedies can work up to a point, but for women who are really absolutely struggling, then it's about quality of life, you know, and we get women come to us, they feel a failure if they have to go on HRT, and we're saying, look, you know, you have to have a decent quality of life. Just talk it through. It's something needs to be talked through with the doctor. You need to ask, what kind of HRT is it? How long have I to stay on it? What are the potential side effects? And one of the most important things, what happens when I come off?
Yeah.
We don't really get a lot of questions on HRT, and that's not our job. That's the doctor's job to answer questions if women need questions answered on HRT. But what we get is a lot of women who come off HRT and they then run into trouble because they're having another hormonal fall, maybe 10 years down the line, and the symptoms they get coming off HRT can be worse than the ones they had to start with. So that takes a lot of proper management, trying to support these women as they come off the HRT. So that would be the only thing our advice would be, don't just go on it for the sake of it, but research it properly, see if it's something you really need, or can you manage to get through the menopause without it. If so, then it's better for you in the long run because you're not then faced with coming off it at some point.
I think that's what a lot of people don't realise, is it's almost like you're just pausing the menopausal symptoms because they come back. Obviously, you stop taking that replacement hormone, your body's still going to go through a loss of that hormone. So I think the more you can do naturally there, the better.
The other issue with HRT is I think it gives women a sort of false sense of security in that I'm feeling great, I don't really need to look after my health as much, and then that can then have a detrimental effect in the future. So again, for women who are on HRT, they need to be just as thorough about their bone health, their heart health, their diet, stress management, as women who are not on HRT.
I think, you know, there isn't a magic pill that fixes for everybody or is right for everybody. I think it's absolutely about looking at each individual and finding out what is right for them. So will I ever get back to normal? Will my body, how long have I got to put up with how long has Neil got to put up with this?
How long is a piece of string? It's different for every single woman. And what I think we've discovered over the years is that for the majority of women, if you're looking after yourself as well as you can, most symptoms will start to tail off 2 to 3 years after periods stop. For some women, it's sooner. You know, some women go through the menopause with hardly any issues at all. For a lot of women, as long as they're looking after themselves, the symptoms will go. It's at the point when your body can say, I'm okay with less hormones. But for a lot of women, if there's a lot of stress, if there's poor diet, if there are other health issues, the menopause can be prolonged. And, you know, we've heard of women still suffering after 10 years. But again, there's nearly always other health issues behind that. So if you are one of those women who 4 or 5 years down the line, you are still struggling with the menopause, you need to get a health check just to make sure that there's nothing else that's triggering all of this rather than the menopause. As far as afterwards, I'm through it now. It's a different me. I like the post-menopause me a lot better than my perimenopause me, because you don't have all the monthly hormonal up and down and moods and periods. I find that my mood is much more level. I have much more energy. I'm fitter than I was. I've got more get up and go. I'm more adventurous. So for me, post-menopause has been really exciting because I've done a lot of things that I wouldn't have had the courage to do beforehand. So I think it's about saying to yourself, the menopause can be really hard. You can't see the end because you're in the middle of it. For the majority of women, there's going to be an end. You will come out. You will be a different you, but you can be a better you. You can be a more exciting you. You can reinvent yourself, you know, which is actually quite exciting. So they do say that an awful lot of little businesses that are being set up in the UK, a lot of them are being set up by postmenopausal women because they've got, you know, that excitement, the drive, and a lack of fear of the future because, you know, they've made it through. So I like to think that it can be quite exciting knowing there's something else.
There's something new.
End. Yeah.
So it's not normal, it's actually a new normal for you. And like you're saying, it doesn't have to be a scary time. Actually, it could be something to look forward to and to embrace, really. I think that's the key thing.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic.
So I have one question.
Yeah.
How could I support my wife or partner, for the other people that are out there, how could I support my wife through the menopause as a man?
First thing is to listen. And the second is to not engage in, if anything, I don't mean gets out of hand, but the problem with women going through the menopause is that very often we don't understand how we are feeling. We can't control our emotions, so our feeling of being in control very often can go. So if you have a partner who maybe doesn't understand and who reacts, then that can make things worse. So it's about being calm. It's about engaging in conversation. You know, if say you ended up getting really angry, so you would say, right, okay, you know, not at the time, but maybe half an hour later, you were a little bit angry. You know, what's going on for you? Why were you angry? And very often when women can just go, I was angry at whatever, it might have been something, nothing to do with you, but it's the nearest and dearest get the brunt of the menopause. So it's just about trying to figure out what's going on in their head, can then help you support them through it. And very often, all we want as women is just somebody to listen to. I mean, I get women, they're on the phone for half an hour, and at the end of it, they go, thank you, I feel better. You know, and we haven't even talked about remedies. They've just been able to moan or cry or just say, this, I can't.
For sure.
Nobody else know. So it's just about letting women express their feelings in a safe environment where they know they're not going to get sort of criticised or anything like that. So I think that's the main thing. And it's also about just learning, you know, getting some easy to understand information on it to see what women are going through physically as well as emotionally. And very often that's really all it takes.
I think it's great, you know, you just being here and being part of this conversation. I feel that there is still a stigma around the menopause and people don't talk about it, yet it's something that the majority of women are going to come across, and hopefully by having conversations with people like yourself, we can start to break down those barriers. And I know when I'm in one of the hormone, you know, mood sort of swings, actually just having somebody to listen and to say, me too, and I understand, and oh my goodness, the hot flush I had last night, or whatever. It's a community, isn't it? And that can be more helpful than anything else.
Absolutely, yeah. And just remember, main things for the menopause, loads of water, and as you mentioned right at the beginning, magnesium is just absolutely fantastic for the menopause, so definitely recommend that to everybody.
You beat me to it. I was just about to ask you, in summary, what are your top tips?
Yeah,
so we've got magnesium and water.
Water, magnesium, a decent amount of magnesium. I mean, the recommended daily dose for women over 50 in the UK, I think, is about 350 milligrams, which is not a lot. So I usually go for a little bit more. And the other thing is for women to put themselves at the top of their list, make it a priority. And if I'm doing little talks or things, I always give women permission. You can put yourself at the top of your list, and very often women will come back and go, oh, thank you, you know, and then they'll go and tell their family, I'm at the top of the list, so I'm going to shut myself away for half an hour. That's the other thing, really important, 30 minutes me time every day. And it's not about sitting down with a cup of tea and watching the soaps or reading a magazine. It's proper either meditation, mindfulness, or listening to, you know, if you like, whale music or raindrops in the forest. There's been studies have been done where they've shown that if you get into the right brainwave pattern, that will cut your cortisol level down within a week. And they did this study on women getting hot flushes, and they found that just that 30 minutes me time a day practically reduced hot flushes and night sweats by 50% in about a week.
Wow.
So and this is all to do with the nervous system. So if you're actually shutting your adrenals down for half an hour, it has a huge impact right across your whole body, both physically and emotionally as well. So that's something, you know, women seem to find time for everybody else, and they need to have that 30 minutes a day. Again, it's one of these things, it's worth its weight in gold.
Fantastic.
Okay. So thank you very much for coming along today, Eileen. It's been fantastic, really informative. I hope you guys found it as informative as we have as well.
Yeah.
When I close, we always say, if you're suffering from the menopause, then feel free to pop in store, comment on our Facebook page, comment on our YouTube. We will get back to you. We will speak to all of you. And we talk about that community in a place where people can come and have that conversation. We are it, you know, all of the staff are really well trained in terms of understanding the menopause and recommending remedies to you. But more importantly than that, we're there for a chat. We're there to just have a talk with you all. So please pop on by and we'll be happy to see you. follow us online, follow us on Facebook, follow us on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, follow us everywhere.
Eileen also has a fantastic vlog that you do on the menopause, and you've got a helpline.
And thank you guys for inviting me. That was really nice. I enjoyed it as well.
Thank you ever so much.
Thank
Eileen.
you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. I'll get down and see you one day.
Yes,
Look forward
please.
to it.
Yes, please. We'd love that.
Okay.